Have you ever been described as a late bloomer? When referring to a human being as a late bloomer, does that mean he or she is a person of low intelligence, unable to figure out what they want for their lives in the way of career, relationships, etc.? Or does it mean that this person is of such high intelligence and acutely aware of all the possible avenues for life that they want to experiment and experience many paths before choosing the one they believe to be the best for them? This is a philosophical question, wrapped in the everyday lingo of late bloomers. In truth, the term late bloomer doesn't necessarily mean slow or confused. It's more like describing a flower that blossoms when most others have already shed their petals. Not defective, just on its own timetable. Now, society often equates early achievement with superiority, as if a person who knows their life purpose at age 16 is automatically wiser than someone who's still figuring it out at 40. But reality and history beg to differ. Many of humanity's greatest minds were late bloomers. But think, Abraham didn't set out on his journey to literally change the world until he was 75 years old. And Moses, he was 80 before being given us Torah that has become the foundation for ethical living throughout the planet. Then we have Albert Einstein, who didn't speak fluently until age 9 and was still a patent clerk in his mid-20s. Renowned artist Vincent van Gogh didn't pick up a paintbrush until his late 20s. Ray Kroc, who founded McDonald's at 52.
Whether that's a blessing or curse is debatable.
And there are so many more examples we could point to of men and women who today would be called late bloomers that have literally impacted nearly every person who has lived over the last 4,000 years. In truth, the term late bloomer doesn't necessarily mean slow or confused. It's more like describing a flower that blossoms when most others have already shed their petals. Not defective, just on its own timetable. The pattern, these people weren't slow learners. They were deep processors. They didn't rush to conform to a system that rewards early certainty. They took the scenic route through the garden of possibilities. So to the second interpretation, yes, in many cases, a late bloomer is precisely the kind of person who feels too much, sees too much, and knows too many paths to commit early. They need to wander before they can choose. That isn't indecision, it's discernment in action. The irony is, once they do bloom, they often surpass the early bloomers who may have peaked up before discovering what they truly loved or their true fulfilling purpose. In truth, the term late bloomer doesn't necessarily mean slow or confused. It's more like describing a flower that blossoms when most others have already shed their petals. Not defective, just on its own timetable. Each soul is different with different timetables. Mystics teach that each soul has its own rhythm in manifesting divine light. Some souls are like lightning, brilliant, quick, impactful, while others are like a slow sunrise, illuminating gradually but more completely. A late bloomer is the latter, a soul whose vessel is clear, needs longer to refine itself before it can hold the light of its purpose without cracking. The light enters only when the vessel is ready. In truth, the term late bloomer doesn't necessarily mean slow or confused. It's more like describing a flower that blossoms when most others have already shed their petals. Not defective, just on its own timetable. Every human life moves through cycles of growth, dormancy, and renewal. Just like nature itself, there's no shame in that it's cosmic timing. There is a time to sow and a time to reap, and each thing blooms in its season. In truth, the term late bloomer doesn't necessarily mean slow or confused. It's more like describing a flower that blossoms when most others have already shed their petals. Not defective, just on its own timetable. Late blooming, or that moment of realization, alignment or creative awakening, is a miniature revelation of the divine. It's the soul reuniting with source through awareness. So when someone finally figures it out later in life, that awakening is not lesser because it came late. On the contrary, it's often holier because it came through struggle, humility, and self-becoming. The late bloomer isn't behind schedule, they're running on divine time. Their flowering isn't delayed, it's ripened by the hidden light. In truth, the term late bloomer doesn't necessarily mean slow or confused. It's more like describing a flower that blossoms when most others have already shed their petals. Not defective, just on its own timetable.